Welcome to the first parent meeting. I'm going to talk kind of back here because I don't want to scream at you guys from the front. I'm going to talk about substance abuse today. My name is McWhorter. I'm the school resource officer for Columbia. I've done this now 1.5 years, coming up on my second year of being an SRO. Worked as a police officer for 5 years. I worked up in North St. Louis County the first 2 years. Incredibly violent area. Dealt with robberies, murders, homicides, car chases, any and everything you could think of. If you turn on cops, I was doing that daily. That got old about 1.5 years in. My wife really disliked me coming home and saying I almost died again. So I decided to start looking at different areas to come work. Columbia was an area that I grew up half the time in, so it was an area that I wanted to kind of apply and reach out to, and it worked out. I'm doing exactly what I want to do here, working with your kids. With that being said, your guys' kids are probably the most important thing in your life. You should be able to go to work and not have to worry that your kids are safe. Know that with myself, your kid's safety is my #1 priority at all times. I will advocate for your kid non-stop and be your kid's advocate if you feel like they do not have one here. So I will 100% be their advocate. Sometimes that puts me at odds with parents, but most of the time I reach out, we work together, and we can get through all these issues together. So with substance abuse, my major concern right now, alcohol, THC, and vapes. Those are the 3 main things that I see the most when it comes to our students. Just by raise of hands, what age do we got here for the most part? Middle school, raise hands. Middle school, high school? Cool, half and half, perfect. All right, so with our middle schoolers, obviously I'm seeing a little bit more of the vapes, but the statistics from the Monroe County Youth Survey are actually gonna show you that alcohol is starting to seep into that. I have not seen THC a ton middle school. It is kind of prevalent in high school, but in small numbers. So my goals today are to kind of give you info on those 3 things and then give you ways to look out for it. So if you start to see some changes in your child or you start to see things that are concerning, you might just have that open conversation with them, say, hey, are your friends around you doing this? Have you seen this? Are you doing this? And if you catch it early, you're able to actually get in front of it. And you guys all being here shows me that you care enough to get in front of it early at the middle school level, and at the high school level, you want to make sure that they're not jumping in and getting involved in that at this point in their life so it doesn't get potentially worse. So substance abuse as a whole, when I'm talking about those 3 items, is an addiction to any one thing. The youth's brain, or any of our students' brain, are growing until they turn 25 years old. Mine just stopped growing a whole 4 years ago. So as they're growing, they can become addicted to substances much easier. Their brain can grow to be addicted to a substance, and as they grow, those pathways, like when you see the squiggles in the brain normally, those pathways could be contributed to those addiction pathways. So if they become addicted at a young age, they're much more likely to later in life to have substance abuse, serious substance abuse issues where they're in facilities, gambling addiction, alcohol addiction, and going to rehab, that kind of thing. So it's important to get ahead of it early before they're too far into the process. Giving them a positive outlook and training on it, I found, is way more effective than super strict punishment. Is there a place for punishment? Absolutely. And your guys' opinion and being firm about these substances makes a giant impact on the kids. I like to look at it as like you guys are coaching your kids. You're not always going to be there with them when they make these decisions, but if you've coached them to make the right decisions and you've instilled the right values in them, they're going to make the right decision based off all the work you've done prior. Are they going to make mistakes? Absolutely. But hopefully they're not making mistakes to the level where you're facing legal consequences and or other people are getting hurt consequences. So instilling it early, being that coach to them, saying, hey, this is what this substance does, this is how this works, this is your potential consequences, so that they know. I don't want you to say, we're not going to talk about this, if you do this, you're grounded forever, you'll never see your phone, you'll never see your friends. That's not the way that I've found, but having that open conversation with them absolutely does have an impact. So, warning signs. As I said, these are things to look out for. If your kids are kind of pulling back from you, especially your middle schoolers, that's semi-normal. They want to hang out with their friends more. They don't want to go to the park and hang out with mom and dad every day anymore. That's normal, but when they start being secretive about it and hiding stuff from you, not showing you your phone, their phone, not showing you who they're hanging out with, and being very short about when and where they're going places, that's something to look out for. You guys know your kids better than anybody else. Look at their baseline, and if you see any deviation from that baseline, that's when you need to start asking questions. Another thing up here, grades. Keep an eye on their grades. Skyward is an awesome system for watching their grades. If you see their classes are all going down at a rapid rate, it'd probably be worth a check-in to see what's going on. That's not just with substance abuse, but when you look at mental health issues and a whole lot of other errors or things that they could fall into, their grades are a good baseline to follow, and if they're deviating from their regular, you might have an issue. These are physical signs. I'm assuming everybody in here has tried alcohol and or any other substance one time in their life, probably alcohol. But you guys know what alcohol looks like in adults, yes? Okay, you got your red eyes, you got your smell, THC, you have your skunky smell, and red eyes as well. Also look at pupils. We don't have a giant issue of opiates here in Monroe County yet, but if you're studying super wide pupils or super pinpoint pimples, that's another thing to look out for. And then their sleep. If they're not sleeping at all and not sleeping for multiple days in a row, might have a problem. Skip that. All right, let's talk about alcohol. So these are the most common things I hear about alcohol, and it can be a conversation based, but I want my child to learn how to drink before college. Kids are going to drink no matter what. If I'm too strict, it'll harm my relationship with my child. I want my child to experience the same traditions I did in high school. Cool. Who's guilty of saying one of those things before? It's fair. Okay, those are pretty common. The biggest ones I see here in Columbia, I see tradition over and over and over in Columbia. I've been speaking with the kids a lot about breaking traditions, breaking norms, and doing what they want rather than being handed down bad behaviors. We have something this week at the high school, the kidnapping, hazing thing that they do, where they kidnap freshmen. That's a behavior that I'm trying to crack down on and break. But that's been given down so much that it's instilled in these kids that this is what I do. And it's normally paired with bad behavior. So you guys are the first line of breaking down some of these bad behaviors when it comes to traditions, especially with alcohol. Learn how to drink before college. That's great in theory, but how are these kids actually drinking when they're getting alcohol? Real question. How do you guys think these kids are drinking when they get a hold of alcohol?
When they're in college, or
like,
if we were going to introduce it at high school?
I got a high schooler and I want my kid to learn to drink, so I'm going to let him drink at the house. Most people or parents that I talk to say, yeah, they'll have a beer or two. I speak with the high schoolers at school of the parents that believe this, and I can tell you that they are all binge drinking 100% of the time that they drink. They're not drinking to have a glass of wine. 95% of them are not drinking a glass of wine with their steak or a beer with their meal. They're drinking to get drunk, and they're drinking as fast and as much as they can. I can speak from personal experiences. That's not how you learn to drink. It's how you learn to drink too much, and it's how you learn to become addicted to a substance and addicted to that high of I'm chasing that drunk, I'm chasing that feeling. That's what you're teaching them when you're saying, oh, they're going to learn how to drink. No, they're going to learn how to become addicted. That's my thought, and that's what I hear from them, because they tell me how they drink, they tell me how they go to these parties, and it's not those one or two beers. It's maybe that in front of you, but when they go right back downstairs, now they know where the beer is. You go to bed, I'm going to grab 3 more, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. That's how it happens, and they tell me this. They tell me everything. The truth, according to a lot of these, here's a lot of words. The truth is there's no single study that shows that actually introducing alcohol to a teen improves their behavior going on. You can't learn how to drink. This is a big long study. I'll send out the slides. That's what that says. I'm going to break down each statement here. Best to drink. The research shows that when parents give alcohol to kids, those children are actually more likely to get in alcohol-related trouble. Alcohol-related trouble can be a whole bunch of different things. Some that we don't think about. Sexual assaults. Car crashes. It's not just my kid is drinking at home and doesn't have any kind of issues coming up. It could be a whole bunch of these other things. Sexual assaults are the biggest thing that I see when it comes to our female students, and they need that education piece of this is a real thing, this can happen. So if you do have a female student, have that conversation, because most that I've had to write police reports for had no idea this was a thing, and they have their eyes open to people are not nice and people are not there to look out for you. So have that conversation of if you drink too much, you may not be able to control certain things. You may not be able to control your body. You may not be as strong as you normally are. Conversation's worth having. Okay, car crashes, #1 leading cause of death for juveniles. Followed behind suicide and, what's my third there? Yeah, homicide. Homicide, suicide, and the #1's car crashes. I am shocked at the amount of alcohol that's given to our teens that we haven't had more car-related deaths. I am shocked. Because the amount that you'll see here in a minute with the survey data will tell you that we have been living in a bubble that hasn't been popped for a long time. I gave a presentation to the students last year prior to prom, and I gave them 3 different stories of 3 different students that passed away in car-related crashes. I put it on a map, and they're bubbled all around us in the Metro East area. All right? I tell them they're not invincible. They're not Superman. They are just as vulnerable and just as easy to get hurt as everybody else. But as a teenager, you don't think about those things. They don't think about that I get in a car, I could pass away in a car. But it's a 1,000-pound machine of metal that's going down the road as quick as they can drive it sometimes. Okay? So educate them, driving piece. I tell them they're not getting in the car if they've been drinking. And the second piece is if anybody else has been drinking, they're not getting in the car. Because it may not be their mistake that cost them to lose their lives. Talked about that. Kids are binge drinking 90% of the time. That does come from their survey. They asked the kids, when you drink, how often are you drinking? 90% of the time they're classified binge drinking. Kids with the strict parents don't know how to drink. There's no data that supports this. Even if you're the most strict parent in the world, you're not going to create an alcoholic that's never tasted beer. Your strict opinion actually gives them a negative connotation when they think about that substance. So you having a negative opinion directly impacts the amount of kids that use and abuse alcohol. Here's the survey I was talking about. The survey goes out to 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students every 2 years. The ROE has decided to disband this survey. I just found out this day, and they're going to replace it with a new survey. The reason that this survey is being disbanded is I guess there was a gender-related question that a whole bunch of people did not like. Outside of that, survey is used around the state of Illinois, very reliable survey, and I'll go through some data that's probably going to surprise you. So the first question asked on there was, did you consume alcohol the last 30 days? I should note that this is completely anonymous. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't see the data on there, and the kids are instructed this. For 8th grade, we had 91% saying no. 9% of 8th grade students were saying yes, they consumed alcohol. This data is from Monroe County. 10th grade, 24% were saying they consumed alcohol, and we were at 51% did consume alcohol in 12th grade over a month period, which is shocking to me, the amount that are using it. But when you look at the town and the demographics, and living here half the time, as I said, growing up, I can see why so many 12th graders, 17, 18 years old, are using substances. There is alcohol everywhere you go, everywhere you see in this town. When you go to any gas station, what's on the windows? First thing you pull up, 30 case of beer, $9.99. When you go in there, alcohol, prominent positions. Alcohol is ingrained in this town, and it's something that we need to start breaking down if we want to see that number go down. All right. Past 14 days, binge drinking, 8th, 10th, and 12th again. Our 8th graders didn't report they were binge drinking, but we did have a little bit more that were. We had 6% in 10th grade saying they were binge drinking, and 23 in 12th grade, which is different because I, in health class, teach DARE at the high school level. I also teach DARE here at the middle school. These kids didn't regularly know what binge drinking was. When I asked them what is binge drinking, they think it's drinking 10 or more beers. They think it's drinking an entire bottle of liquor. These kids don't have a good definition of what binge drinking is and or how harmful it actually is to them, which is why I think that number's low, but not so low not to be concerned. Big question and literal question. How do you guys think kids are getting their alcohol?
Parents and all their siblings.
Parents and siblings. That's one of them. Where else? Friends. Yep. That's another one. Any other thoughts? No? Fake IDs. There are a couple of those. So there's a good amount that are circulating that the kids are telling me about that they've ordered. I've seen some kids, you go to fakeid.com on the internet or Google it. There's a whole bunch of Chinese websites that they can go to. They ship fake IDs in like a jewelry box. Graduated students have told me this. They said, this is how I got this. They no longer have it after I educated them. It's a criminal felony to possess a fake ID, at which point they told me the whole process of this is how I got this thing. I don't know what 8th graders look like they're 21. I can't name a single one. But they did answer that they were buying it at the store. 4%, 4%, and 23%. Obviously your seniors are closer to 21. They think that they can use these fake IDs. Social access. When I say social access, that's your brothers, sisters, that kind of thing. Family members, maybe a friend. That was at 32%, so a good amount of our 8th graders, 67 for 10th grade, 73% for 12th grade. Stealing, which a lot of parents that say their kids drink at home or I want to teach them, that's normally the number one response. There's those answers. But the number one reason is parents with their permission, and those numbers made me sick when I saw them the first time. 30% of 8th grade parents are supplying our Monroe County children with alcohol at 12, 13 years old, which is shocking. I get that we're a big town that has alcohol and we're a German town. I get it, but 12, 13 years old, 30% of parents giving them alcohol is sickening. When you get up to 12th grade, not that 50% isn't great, and this is why we have a whole lot of crash issues. 12th grade, we're almost at 60%. That means it almost puts them in the majority to be making correct decisions or to not be making good decisions. So it's harder for our kids that want to make good decisions because all these parents, 58% of the kids that were drinking over the last 30 days were saying, my parents are supplying it. That's tough as a parent, and that's a barrier that we have to break down, because if that last stat continues, we can do all the work in the world, but you have singular parents providing alcohol saying, oh, come drink at my house, that's going to continue to be a problem. So how do you attack that? Know where your kid's going. Become friends with your parents, your kids' parents. Maybe it's just a text. Hey, my kid's coming to your house after homecoming. Do you know how many kids are coming? Is he staying there? Ask a question. We've gotten away from that in a lot of different professions. We've gotten away from parent contact, like teaching. Parents and teachers, I feel like, call less. When I was in school, my teacher was calling all the time about all my discipline problems. My mom knew everything going on in my classroom at all times. But we also had 12 kids. We weren't jam-packed full of 25, 27 kids in a classroom. right? So have that contact with each other to talk about it, because once you figure out this is the parent that's supplying, this is the parent, I send him to this house and he comes home hungover, stop sending your kid to that house and ostracize that kid and or parent, and you'll start to see a difference in that friend group. I tell the kids the same thing. It takes a group of people to change one's bad behavior. So as we start changing parents' opinions and behaviors on this, we'll start to see slowly that number coming down. Social host law. Have you guys ever heard of this? No? Okay. So this is something I'd love to give to all the parents that are in that 58%. I don't think this is you guys, but it's important to know and blast out this information maybe to families that do. So social host law, I'll get all that up there. Social host law allows the police to write a citation to any household that is allowing kids to drink at their house. Problem is we have to know about it. We have to get a call, we have to actually go out there. Not only does it allow us to write a citation and kick all those kids out, give all those kids a citation as well, but if somebody gets hurt, it allows us to charge them with a criminal felony. Somebody goes to a party, they drink, that kid leaves their house and crashes and hurts somebody, we're able to charge the adult. Even if somebody doesn't leave and hurt somebody, we're able to issue that citation, but you are in charge as the host of everybody in that house. So if they leave and hurt somebody, that's on you. You can be sued civilly, as well as this criminal punishment. So, quick Q&As. Am I breaking the law if I allow underage guests to come and consume alcohol in my home? Yes, you can be written that citation. Can I be sued if my child or underage guest drinks alcohol and injures himself? Yes, civilly, and you'll have a criminal charge. Underage guests to drink or possess alcohol of property that I control. Say it's not in your house, but you own a shed that sits out on your property, and you're not in that shed, but it's your shed. Yes. Biggest thing here is some people don't have an exorbitant amount of money sitting in a bank account to pay for a crash. I don't have an extra 10 grand sitting in a bank account to just pay somebody. They could actually come for your property sometimes with civil damages and stuff, take stipends out of your pay. This is a route when people get hurt that you're paying punitive damages to other families. So your homeowner's insurance will not cover this. No homeowner's policy covers that. So it's important to note. Look at that, it's almost if I knew. All right, unlikely. Any questions about alcohol? We'll come back at the end, but alcohol is the #1 problem we face here in Columbia. It's the #1 reason for bad decisions in our area. It's just ingrained in these kids. This is what we do, and they see it everywhere. So it's something that we have to start to change if we want to see a difference. Talking about vapes, has everybody seen a vape? Okay, so how a vape actually works, it has a lithium battery. You put your juice in the top, it's heated by a metal coil. That metal coil, these kids don't take care of. What happens is that metal coil degrades over time as it gets heated up. That's why you start to see kids with COPD at 20, 30 years old. They start to inhale bits of those fibers that are in there, and that metal actually starts to break down. So they're breathing in metal with poorly taken care of devices, which most of them have because they know they're not supposed to have them, and they'll get in trouble if I get caught with this vape. So they're not getting top of the line vapes. They're getting $10 offline, or my buddy used this for 2 weeks and it's got 2 puffs left in it. That's the vapes that they're getting. History, I was in high school when vapes became a big thing. The mod devices are your square devices that you would put juice into. Most of our students are probably using disposable devices that they can throw away quickly. These disposable devices came out right around 2015. Juul pods, they look like little USB sticks. that you could easily throw away. So if I'm at school and I know that I get a disposable like a Juul, if I'm about to get caught, I can flush this thing and I'm only out 15 bucks, rather than my bigger mod devices, 20, 30 bucks. And these kids know that, so they'll go buy disposables. So as you're looking at vapes or worried about vapes, it's important to know the difference, because most of the time when you're up to those mod devices, they vape for longer amounts of time because they know, hey, this costs more to get, and it's not so easy to throw away something that I want, that I've spent all that money on, especially as a kid. 2018, they stopped the flavors. Juul was marketing to children, is how they kind of got around it, and all the fun flavors stopped. Your blueberry, cinnamon, mango, all your flavors of vapes stopped within the Juuls. You can still buy a whole bunch of flavors, and if you've ever caught or seen a child with a vape, they probably have a flavored vape, but most of the vapes now are infused, so you would put your actual juice in, and there's more regulations on those flavors. I often hear that vaping is like water vapor. I like to break that down. When you look at the chemical composition of actual vape smoke or a vape cloud, it's closer to Axe body spray than water vapor. The word vape comes from vapor. That's why they think, oh, it's just like water vapor, and water's only got 3 forms, so this can't be bad for me. The chemical process of turning that vape juice into the smoke doesn't happen with a light. It's not combustion like a cigarette. It's the heating of that coil. And the heating of that coil puts off a whole bunch of different chemicals that they're inhaling, like the metal. So here are the known dangers of vaping that are scientifically proven. So some of the known dangers: nicotine, we know it's addicting. Propylene glycol, which the theater kids were just up here and I was talking to them about this. Theater fog comes in it's like a milk jug. You pour it in, it combusts, a chemical reaction happens and it produces that theater fog. Most of the vapes within that combustion or the heating of that liquid, it creates this, which is very similar, causes COPD. VOCs, this is the reason you get a lot of ENT issues, not being able to breathe. As I said, vapes came out when I was in high school, so I've seen people my age vape since their inception with the big mod devices. Some of them cannot go up the steps, go play with their kids anymore. It's really sad to see it happening, and they're actually some of the people that are vocalizing and telling me how bad these things are for them. The funny thing is they're so addicted to the nicotine and the stuff in them that they're still doing it. So they're telling me how bad this is for them, and I can't go do this with my child, and I get winded. But they're still vaping, which really bothers me and shows how addicting they actually are. Flavoring chemicals, if you look at any vape box, there's normally only 2 ingredients on there. It's a flavoring agent and a type of sugar, essentially. So those 2 things together, they put them together, heat it up, a whole bunch of list comes off. Those flavoring chemicals can be linked and related to lung cancer. Formaldehyde, which is used at funeral homes to stuff bodies, make people smile, and yeah. That's actually known from coming from not well taken care of vapes. So formaldehyde's a chemical that comes out of them, not something you want to breathe in. It's a known carcinogen. Bones, unlike your brain, only grow till you're 18. You can have less bone density, more breaks. Your bones just won't be as strong. Your blood, the nicotine goes through your blood and it can actually affect your bone composition. So within your bone composition, you might see some of these things with the vapes of weaker bones, more fractures, and then osteoporosis for people that are long-term vape users. All right, this is a study from the National Library of Medicine. They looked at what that heating of the chemical was, the coil, and they called that nitrosation. What they found was 2 chemicals came out of that, NK and NNN. I'm not going to try to say either of those, but they took 40 mice, and they essentially made the mice vape every day. They didn't give them small mice vapes, but they put like a glass tube over them and they injected them with a similar amount that they were seeing students and kids vape daily. So they would inject the same amount of nicotine or the same amount of pod that these kids were getting daily. What they found was the vapes, after a period of time, were damaging their DNA repair, giving them lung and bladder problems. They were also getting tumors on some of their vital organs, mainly around their stomach. Here's the stats on how it ended. 9 out of 40, 22% got lung cancer. 57% ended up getting those tumors all around their bladder or their urinary system. Tumors started growing on them. That being said, we're not mice. We live longer lives than mice, thankfully. But they found that the mice were the most humane thing to do this with, and they're finding that we're not going to see the actual effects of this stuff on humans for another decade to come. So it's going to be more time before we start to see these serious lung cancers, these serious tumors start developing on people. And as I said, my age, we have COPD issues that I'm seeing pop up in multiple friends that can't breathe. And it's sad, but we're going to see another round of this and another round of serious stuff coming out of these vapes within a decade. Questions on vapes? No? We're rocking and rolling.
I might get to this, but is it worse than cigarettes?
Absolutely, in my opinion, because of how they're marketed. Vapes were created to stop smoking, but at the same time, they were created to pull people in that weren't smoking to start with. The amount of nicotine in one Juul pod was the equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes. So they're more addicting, I would say. Like I told you, I have friends that...
They're convenient to use, I would think, too. So you could do it more often. Make it smoke more in your pocket.
So you can vape a lot of places. You don't smell like smoke. They're easy to hide, easy to conceal. And when you look at kids, they don't know any better. They're bubblegum, pecan flavor, and they think, oh, this makes me look cool. So I hate these vape devices. I think they're incredibly dangerous, and we're not going to see the full danger of them for years to come. I think it's going to be just like smoking. We're going to see that 50–60% of people are using these devices now, and then we're going to see that steady decline until they come up with a new product from the tobacco industry to get people hooked again. So it's another way to get people involved, because nobody's buying cigarettes. It's down to 15%, I think, in the country. All right, THC. I am seeing this a little bit at the high school level. I have not seen THC since I've started as an SRO in the middle school level. But there is a whole bunch of different ways to consume cannabis now, especially since it was legalized. There is any and every way you could think of to use cannabis. I went into Phillips 66 last month, and now they're selling cannabis drinks right at the front. If you go in today, they're sitting there right at the front. So now you can drink your cannabis. I had no idea. That's a very small amount though. Your 1.5%, I believe that's going to become a bigger market, especially with your drinking towns, such as Columbia. There is a bill out there to actually stop that and make it only sales in dispensaries, but there's still time before that potentially gets passed. Most common ways I'm seeing teens use cannabis is through the vape devices. You can normally tell the difference between a nicotine and a vape and a regular nicotine vape because of the markings on it. If you see pot leaves on it, it's probably cannabis. If you see little green dots on it, it's probably cannabis. And then the boxes clearly are marked. They say 1%, they say cannabis contained. So if you find a box, it's very clear. These kids are pretty smart though with the markings on some of the vapes. They'll scratch them off. Scratching is probably the best way to say it, but these things are physically on there and glued on there. So if you see a super scratched up vape device, you probably have a THC device that they're trying to make look like a regular one. The only other way that I've been able to tell the difference between a THC and a regular nicotine vape is the actual liquid inside. The liquid of a THC vape will be much more viscous. It won't freely flow like a liquid. It'll kind of be sticky. So that's another way that I can tell sometimes. Capsules, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with vapes at all.
but you can smell them. They smell fruity because of the flavors. Are the THC ones the same way? Are those flavored, or are you going to notice a different smell?
So the vape industry markets on there's no smell. I can tell you that it's very, very slight, but most THC vapes are still even flavored a whole bunch of different funky flavors. They'll have blueberry THC, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. But no, unless if you're using it, you would taste in the smoke and the cloud. You would potentially taste the difference, but the smell won't be there for every single one. Yes and no. Sorry. But it is a good point for actual leaf. So leaf, you absolutely will smell. You'll smell it on their clothes. You'll smell it in their stuff. I'm not seeing a ton of kids actually use leaf anymore, like rolling blunts and physically lighting it. That's just not what these kids are doing nowadays. I feel like it's more stuff, it's more work. They'd rather spend the extra $5 and have a vape that does the same thing. Edibles are another big thing I see. You see a whole bunch of candies in black Ziploc bags. Look a little more into it. They make THC infused candies that look just like real candy, but they come in normally it's black Ziploc bag with no markings on it. So that's another thing that these kids do like to use. Big thing, THC now is way, way stronger than it was. THC content is up there of 80, 90% pure THC, when in the 70s and 80s, you're looking at low 10s. This is for leaf. There's something called dabs. Dabs is a process where they cook THC into a sugar pan, essentially, and flatten that out, and it's about 90, 95% pure THC, which is not we're smoking a little bit of leaf in 1970s and 80s. So these kids are getting super, super high, super fast from potentially one of those dabs. The dabs themselves, they look like earwax or like bee wax. They come in little containers. If you see those containers or something that looks like that, definitely a cause for concern, and you're looking at very high THC content. Marijuana use, you hear about zombies with long-term teen marijuanas. They'll start losing focus, losing personality points. Everything will start to be lower. So I said earlier, look at your baseline. Everything will start to be lowered with long-term THC use. It won't necessarily be your calm, but we also see more depression, anxiety-related issues with long-term use. Because weed or marijuana will normally start out with, I'm anxious, I'm going to use this because people telling me I'm calm, but then it actually turns into the point of their anxiety and the point that they are depressed. Yep, there it is, mental health. Okay, so parent prevention, this is where I was talking about your opinion matters. And it's great to know all these things, and it's great to be educated, hear the actual issues, but your guys's opinions and how you treat your kids directly impacts how their brains function. So if you're coaching them to make these decisions and you're coaching them that I perceive drinking as a problem, it directly impacts what they choose to do. This chart shows that parents that had a more negative opinion, those towns had a lower use of alcohol. So you just telling your kid, I don't approve of this, you're not 21, and there'll be consequences if you're drinking or caught drinking, has a direct impact. We have a high tolerance, clearly, because 60% of 12th grade parents are giving alcohol, so we have a high tolerance here. And if we flip those numbers, you'll actually start to see those numbers flop. These aren't our numbers, this is a neighboring town. Our graph looks very similar. At the end of our graph, our numbers actually cross. So you have more kids that are using alcohol than the disapproval is so high that the number meets it there. But the more you disapprove of it, the more likely your kid is to disapprove it as well. Your kids imprint on you. They have the same morals because they've been raised by you at least until a certain point, until they start to kind of deviate, but you guys are programming them as they're growing up. Continue to program them as they get older. What we're finding is when kids get older, and here's this is the years, I'm sorry. As kids get older, we're not having these conversations as often. We're assuming that just because they've done it a couple times means that they're going to continue to do it. As they get older, it's just as important to continue having those conversations as if they were younger and hadn't tried at all. Just because they try something one time doesn't mean that they're going to be a user and everything's over, but we need to continue to have those conversations with the kids. As a community, we got to do better. I'm not okay with 30% of my 8th graders drinking. It really bothers me that many children are potentially going to have substance abuse problems in the future, and that's on us. I know very little ways that an 8th grader could go find alcohol, other than maybe it's on the shelf within reach. Knowingly giving young kids alcohol is not good for them in any situation. And continue to have those conversations. This is the stats for talking as they're getting older. You see the numbers steadily decline. 8th grade, you tell them about not drinking, 61%, 40% of 10th graders, 41%, which I found was weird. Maybe it's because they're using alcohol more. All right? But the numbers are declining for education. Not using vapes. Same thing, we're declining. We're thinking, oh, they're getting older, they're going to do what they want to do. Not using THC, same process, okay? Keep having those conversations with your kid, and they'll have a positive impact sooner or later. Research shows when parents talk to their teen about the risk of alcohol and drugs, those teens are 50% less likely to use substances. Continue to talk. Don't be the you'll be grounded and you'll never see the light of day parent, but have open, honest conversations with them of, if you're using this, there's going to be consequences, but also you are there to help them out. So if they're at a party, if they're stuck, if they're scared, when you look at the females with any kind of the sexual assault things, try to help them, help the student, help the child first, and the education can still come. Just because they made a mistake doesn't mean you can't help them, go get them from a party, but you can still do the education piece after. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so clear expectations, give them facts, and then always have that open communication. If your kid's comfortable coming to you and telling you about it, you've probably established clear enough expectations that they know what they should and shouldn't be doing. Coach your kids, don't control your kids. Active listening is a key part. Listen to what your kids' issues are. If they start telling you about anxiety, depression, mental health, any of those issues, and you see a change from that baseline, start to pay attention to what they're doing, who they're hanging out with. Listen to what they're saying. I hear from the counselors that the kids are seeking help, asking for help, and it may just be a little comment here or there that they're putting out to parents, but it seems like they're saying, I'm reaching for help and I'm not getting it. So open up that communication. Just say, hey, if they put out one of those small comments that they're asking for help or they don't know what to do, try to reach out and follow up with those things, because just remembering some of those small things do make a difference to the kids. This is a whole bunch of different quotes I've accumulated in talking from parents about other parties. I'm not going to read them. Parents agree. Like, everybody in here thinks that our kids shouldn't be using substances. I would agree with that because you guys are here. Everybody else that isn't here, for the most part, agrees with this too. We have a couple people that perpetuate this problem and continue to make this an issue and everybody's issue. Pick those people out and we can start to make that change. Because until those people start changing what they're doing, they're going to have those negative impacts on your kids for decisions that you're not making. and talk to other parents. I said it at the beginning, but the more you talk and the more you're friends and communicate with those kids' friends, the more you're going to see trust going both ways. You might make a friend. Your friends, generally speaking, pick people that are semi-close to them. They have similar values to you. You might make a new friend. So just reach out. It doesn't have to be you hang out every week, but maybe send a Facebook message or get the number of the parent of the house they're going to. Have that open communication. Here's the address for HSS in Waterloo. HSS does have a little bit of juvenile counseling. We have a juvenile counselor come to the high school at least once a week. She meets with some students. That's a good resource to have. I put 2 websites as well that have a good amount of drug substance abuse information. Some of it I pulled for the presentation. And then myself, I have a school email. If you guys have individual questions or have questions that you want answered, you can reach out at any time. And I'm willing to have those conversations with you, have conversations with your child. I just need to know who to speak with. So reach out. If you see it's a problem, reach out and say something. We've been handed a whole bunch of bad traditions. You guys are the start of actually breaking it and making change. You guys teach the children as they grow to be better. Eventually they do make their own decisions, but it starts with you guys, and it starts with continuing that education as they get older. So let's break that cycle of alcohol and substance abuse and problems early, and then we'll start to thrive as we go. But we have to recognize it's a problem. If we keep living with our heads in the sand and living as if this isn't a problem, and we don't have a problem with 30% of our 8th graders drinking, then we have a problem. All right? So start to be the change you want to see, and shining a light on our problems now is going to make tomorrow a brighter place, because we're going to be fixing the issues that we're pretending aren't there. Any questions? No? Questions at all?